early November. When polar air flows in, temperatures can suddenly plunge way below freezing. It's so cold that nature seems to hold its breath. Not a trace of green is left. If the frost continues for several weeks, the river begins to freeze. The ice is still soft, but more and more of it comes drifting down the river. In the bends, the new ice builds up and gradually hardens until the Morava's gurgle fades into silence. The lush green wetland forest has turned hostile. It's now a white desert. The wild geese have drawn out their stopover as long as possible. Keeping their water holes open has become tedious, and in the end, the frost wins. One morning, as if by secret command, they take off to the south. In spring, on their journey back to the high north, they will touch down again. The only voices on the floodplain now are those of the crows. Even in winter, the water levels rises and falls, creating bizarre sculptures of ice. The Morava does not freeze over each winter, but when it does, the ice turns the river into a dream world. And catfish glide silently below the ice. They do not hibernate, but their body functions are slowed down. Early March, 1 or 2 weeks before the equinox, the first migrant birds return from their winter quarters. During the most severe cold, the wild swans had been away at a nearby lake. But nothing keeps them there once the ice on the oxbows turn thin and fragile. The forest canopy is still bare of leaves, so the spring sun can quickly thaw the dark forest floor. In the undergrowth, new life is stirring. The wild boar mother stays around the birth location until the little ones can run and follow her. For decades, the wild boar populations of Eastern Europe have been growing. In recent years, since winters have become milder, they have begun to push westward. After refreshments, the new energy has to be spent. It will be a long time until these two brothers will be mighty males, but a hierarchy will soon be established. After sparring, it's cuddling time again. In late March, the skies suddenly get noisy. The wild geese are back. The bean and white-fronted geese will soon continue on their journey north, but the grey-lag geese have come to stay, mate and raise their young. Once a grey-lag goose male and a female have become a pair, they'll stay together for life. That's the rule, but obviously not one carved in stone. If the first choice is not a happy one, the second or third might work out. The thick ice on the river takes much longer to melt than the frozen ground, but gradually the midday sun achieves more than the night frost, and the river begins to flow again. Once the ice thaws from above and below, there's no turning around. The world's no longer rigid now. Things are moving. The Morava still pushes an enormous ice load. Again and again, the ice jams. But then, finally, the spell is broken. Just a day earlier, a wild animal could have crossed the river on foot. Massive as the ice cover was, the Morava crushed it within hours. Meltwater has filled the dips and hollows, and on sunny days, it quickly warms up. And soon, the water attracts life. Simultaneously, thousands of more frogs leave their winter quarters to meet at these pools. The males arrive first. During the mating period, which only lasts a few days, the males turn bright blue. When the females arrive, the mass mating starts. Then the spawn matures in pools and puddles until tadpoles hatch. But this year, things are different. Ice and snow have hardly melted when a huge rain front rolls in from the Atlantic, all the way to Central Europe. The ground is already soaked from the snowmelt. On top of that, it rains for days without a break, all across Czechia, Slovakia, and eastern Austria. The Morava drains vast areas in all three countries. While the pools on the floodplain are running over, more water comes from tributaries, even after the rain has stopped along the Morava's lower range. The lower Morava is like the neck of a huge funnel, the size of its entire catchment area. The water in the oxbows and in the floodplain is not just rising, it's shooting through old channels at a violent speed. Eventually, the inundation also engulfs the higher fields. The Morava has turned into a very wide river. In places, it's 100 times wider than usual. The animals sense that this is not a normal flood. Floods like that occur once in a century. Now it's time to get out. It's a race against time.